We are now headed to our next speaker, who is joining us in Italy, though normally he would be in Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. We have Roberto Iñiguez Flores, who currently leads the School of Architecture, Art and Design at Tecnológico de Monterrey, a national-scale project that has operations in 19 cities with undergraduate and graduate programs in architecture, design, digital art, and urbanism. He's a designer with more than 20 years of experience in innovation for industrial sectors such as furniture, consumer products, and mobility. His research focuses on the advanced design cultures with particular interest on anticipation processes, the relations between systems and design, and how individuals and organizations develop advanced design competencies. Welcome, Roberto.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure and an honor to be here celebrating World Design Organization anniversary and also celebrating our Industrial Design Day. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you with us.
Wonderful. And well, I would like to share a little some reflections regarding the platform that we have been running since 2020, and during this couple of years. This platform is oriented to the debate on regards to our discipline and how it shall be transformed during this time. It got born in the middle of the crisis of the pandemic, so it got born in a moment where we thought that we needed to reflect on that. I am sharing now my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
So. Okay, here it is. The platform is called El Diseño que Viene in Spanish, or the design to come. In this case, I would like to share some reflections that has got born directly for this platform for reflection and debate connected to leadership, since it's the topic of today's celebration. And as I already mentioned, it got born in the middle of a crisis, and the crisis of coronavirus that has become the most single relevant, important event in 2020, and now it has almost 2 years happening. In this context, we run several projects, but this one was really important to us. We have been inviting several leaders, very diverse profiles, from practitioners to researchers. Very huge diversity in terms of ages, gender, and professional profiles. Some of them working and leading inside of big companies, some of them entrepreneurial, but all of them very connected, let's say, to the Latin world. These discussions and debates has been on Spanish because we wanted to have a global discussion, but a global discussion that is also connected to a particular culture, in this case, the Hispanic culture. So you can see here some of the examples of the leaders that we have been invited to the debates, and through these debates that happens every 2 months, we have been having some reflection. Here you can see some of the analysis of the semantic view that we could have of that debate, and it's very easy to see how the words understand, resolve, or generate, and like the words more seated during the debates. Now that we have been having several debates on this, and sorry, no, okay, and well, the first thing that I would like to present is the part of the debate that began with the here and now, and what could design in the middle of this crisis, pandemic, and then are confronting several issues. This being position of being in transitorial post-pandemic, let's say, or trans-pandemic, as some authors has mentioned, have been happening. Many of the discussions has been between this idea of the design leadership that is like a call of action. In the idea of the design is a very problem-solving activity and trying to react to what is happening on society and is happening in our different regions and in terms of opportunities and crises. And in the other side, in the other hand, the window of reflection. We have been living also times where we think, and this platform of dialogue and debate we think is a very clear example about that. This space that, okay, it's not just about acting or reacting, or the question is not what to do, but also which are the main and important questions that we could put on the table as designing and facilitate in order to reflect and to create the important discussions about it. Aaron Chichenover, a chemistry Nobel Prize that recently visited us at Tecnológico de Monterrey, called some of the issues that are happening right now, neglected subjects, to say that together with the pandemic and the climate change, there is some other issues that has been arise and have been sometimes long before, but now has been arising since in the middle of this dynamic of change, such as social justice, economic recession, together with unemployment in some regions, the rising of populism, gender-based violence, migration, and well, of course, all the increasingly environmental factors that we are all now very worried about it. So during these discussions and debates, the phrase that the normality in which we were previously living was not sustainable makes clear the need for a significant change and the preoccupation on how society normalize these issues and see them as unremarkable. The World Economic Forum has called these spaces or opportunity to reflect on which will be our future, or the future that we will prefer, as the Great Reset. And the next question will be, which is the role of design leadership in the middle of a Great Reset that we have been living in this last year and a half. The World Economic Forum coined this concept of the Great Reset as the opportunity to major structural change as a priority throughout the whole of society. So it is important to reflect on that and how we could change this tradition of design and design leadership as problem solvers to switch to a mindset and to an approach that is more opportunity finding in terms of putting balance in this idea of the call to action and create spaces for reflection, how we could create a new leadership that take in account this a new balance that goes from problem solving opportunity of an opportunity finding could be a way to express all design leadership power, let's say, for identifying the opportunities presented by the crisis, and in the middle of uncertainty, seeking their potential and then having the conversation required in order to improve resilience and make both society and the planet a more positive spaces. The recurring invitation is to see the crisis as a great opportunity. Moments of great complexity are an opportunity of innovation, has been one of the biggest phrases during these debates. The second and very relevant reflection is regards our discipline. There were some consensus on how our discipline of design shall evolve in a more extended practices, let's say, connecting radically to other disciplines and migrates from the tradition of being based mainly in creativity to link to in a stronger ways to science, for instance. And this idea of extended design includes a leadership towards a long view, the anticipatory gaze, which gives design projects a longer term perspective, as opposed to the urgency of the competitive market. The anticipatory gaze also incorporates a greater breadth of knowledge, a number of variables as part of its operation. A long-term vision of the project is invaluable in terms of incorporating sustainability and social justice. As Snarik mentions, short-termism makes it more difficult for us to construct a sustainable world. And the short-termism mindset has the consequence of a colonialized future. The idea of broadening our discipline goes on the temporal dimension, but also on the order of change dimension. According to Brand, the combination of fast and slow makes the system more resilient. So how if we could be a more vertical discipline, in a sense of being as usual, let's say, very relevant on the fashion and commerce level, which are the faster ones, but connected deeper with the different levels, broadening the aim and ethos of our discipline. The discussion includes recognition of what has been achieved, but also reivindicates design fundamentals. Those elements that form part of design, which we need to be centered, recognized, and empowered. The value of design leadership is its capacity to create positive change. We are a discipline dedicated to imagine which doesn't exist, and with simultaneously not only imagining, but planning the steps which need to take place in order to transform. This topic has been widely addressed as design leadership, but it's not still a generalized practice, at least in Latin America or in our region. The last part of the discussion is regards the future. Which are the major changes that are going to shape our discipline? And also, into a broader, more ambitious way, which are the transformations that we are going to face as a society that are connected with us as designers? And some of the conclusions, of course, were that we need to rethink very important paradigms, and designers as facilitators are able to do that, create narratives and transitions for the future that we want, and put at the center of our activity and our leadership the ethical imperative. And I want to elaborate a little bit more. During the debate, the question about the future brought home the stark reality of the unsustainability of modern lifestyle. It is becoming increasingly clear that the paradigms which have previously governed our relationship with the environment need to change. The design of the future need to propose and reach a consensus on an alternative way for humans to continue inhabiting the planet. But something very risky when we look at the future, it is the temptation of looking at the future in a very generalized way, let's say. And the future is plural. We have learned from Design Future that the central discussion of the future is that the future is unequal. So this is a quote of Yuval Noah Harari that had visited our university some months ago. And the freshman made very clear the risk of an unequal world could exacerbate in the future the difference between developed and non-developed regions. The geography of power in this sense is changing. This is a map of the data sensors and clouds of Google, for instance, and taking just a look on this, we can identify some regions or countries that are going to gain growth and others to lose radically. For instance, one of the risks are the new era of colonialism and imperialism based on data. Who controls the data flow? in the future, which are the countries or regions that are going to be independent countries and which are the ones that are going to be data colonies. A paradigm center to come under the spotlight is growth. As the dominant model is based on the belief that the only arbiter of progress and social well-being is continual economic expansion, this belief refers back to the report published in the 70s in the Club of Rome, called The Limits of Growth, very familiar to all of this community that is connected, which was the first to sound the alarm about how unchecked growth put the limited resources of the planet under stress and cause ecological and environmental degradation. Another significant and more contemporary reference is reference to as the donut economy. Here on the screen, you can see it from Robert, which makes clear a difference in two specific limits. The minimum limit, the social foundation, which is concerned with ensuring the basic well-being of human beings, and the maximum limit, the ecological ceiling, which represents the capacity of our planet to be a just and fair space for humanity. Using the logic of maximum and minimum limits, design leadership must provide a constant and consistent frame of reference for our future practice. Design has always acted from the limits. It is on its nature to recognize the limits and act from there. It is time to embody the planetary limits as framework for design leadership practices. At the turn of a century, Campbell theorized that narratives have permitted humanity to organize and construct large community systems with morph into common beliefs, which will self-regulate societies and foment a sense of community and relevance. It is shared narratives which have permitted the creation of our civilization. As part of these debates, the question has arisen of the potential of design to build the future that we want and to create the narratives of grand opportunity. Given the current lack of uniting social contracts, the latter is important because given the growing polarization in our society, there is an even more pressing need for us to dream of a common future. When faced with a present of such complexity and uncertainty that we are living, the future is the one thing that we have in common. And it seems that design is capable of navigating this common ground and inspiring society through narratives. Narratives which unite and inspire us, and the roads which will take us there. Transition design is going to be crucial for the future to come. Describe it as Irving, for instance, as a design activity that proposes radical change in social cultural paradigms at system level to describe and map out the trajectories of future change. This is a representation of the cosmogony of one of the Birrárica region, which is a very ancestral community in my country, in Mexico, and represent the cosmogony of them and how design is able to create the narratives that are intercultural but represent a future common dream that integrates diversity, for instance, and creating bridges in a very polarized world. Let's say this is one of the questions that really activates the debate. And finally, something that has to be at the center of the ethical imperative, having a profound reflection on the social function of design in the world of today, is our reflection should attempt to discern the fundamental values that need to define our profession. And this phrase by Mike Monteiro, that we are not pixel pushers, we are not take care or not order takers, but we are gatekeepers. And gatekeepers of the ethical imperative is something that we really need to take seriously in terms of the activity of design leadership, how we are putting into action this idea of being the gatekeepers of transformation, for innovation or design project that reflect on our activity in terms of ethical implications in the world that we would like to have. The need of having an axiological code of design reverberates in the discussions, and it's understood as an opportunity to clearly define the values of our discipline in the 21st century. These values will help us to construct an ethic which facilitates decision-making criteria, for instance, and in this way, positively influence the creation of a more just and sustainable world. At the end, design has always been political, and this is a project of Rael with a very simple and very well-designed artifacts such as these pink seesaws installed in the border of the US and Mexico, make us reflect on the challenges that we have in terms of the relationship between different countries, let's say. And well, the discussion have during still taking in place. I already mentioned that more than 40 experts have been participating, and we are inviting more and more. For some of the not discussion, not conclusions, that has been mentioning during the debates are these that I am presenting in the screen. Trying to recall, we could use the advanced design framework as a way to frame the broader inactivity, scope, and approaches of design to practices and reflections that are extended in time with the framework of a long term, for instance, intergenerational, intersectional tool that guarantees a planet for the future generations to come. Broader processes, radically transdisciplinary, decentralized and participatory, and culturally transformative, global and hyper local, and at the end, with the emphasis on making things happen, the great power that design leadership has, that is making things happen. This is a resume of the transition mentioned and discusses. It's not black and white, and it is not instead of, more the idea of a transit to connect with a more contemporary relevant practices. Some of them have been already discussed in the design research arena, but they are not yet a generalizing praxis, such as trying to go from taking advantage of design tools to a more advanced design perspectives, connecting the focus, the tradition of the design focus on product to a more connected to the idea of the processes design. The same when we talk about content, but trying to be more strategical activity. I already mentioned this idea of how we could go from problem solving to problem finding. This idea of being entrepreneurial, use the power of design for being proactive is very root and connected to design leadership. The idea of the short term and the long perspective and how to balance both. And also something very mentioned during the debate is how to put balance and being gatekeepers, as Monteiro mentioned, of being not just market driven, but also community driven. How we could include and do more intersectional design is also part of the challenges of these ages. And taking in account the global, but being very, very local, as Mancini mentioned, some kind of cosmopolitan localism activity in design is very needed, and a very important shift from user-centered design to a life-centered design, let's say, or planetary-centered design. Several authors have mentioned in a different way. This has been part of the discussions on this platform. And for me, it's a great honor to share some of the thought that many of the people that have been joined to this conversation have mentioned. So I wouldn't like to take credit for that, just to be being a vehicle to express from this region, from Latin America, from Mexico, in particular, some of the reflections that design leadership is having during this last year and a half, let's say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Roberto. We do have just 3 or 4 minutes, so I might ask you a quick question or 2, if you don't mind, about your presentation. 2 came to mind immediately. One we received from our audience, and it was a little bit earlier in your presentation when you were talking about generalizing about the future and the dangers that lie in generalizing about the future and introducing these pluralities. So one of the questions was, how do you make that kind of tangible for design students today?
Thank you. It's a wonderful question. Yes, the great risk is trying to create the idea of that global futures, or a global unique future dominant is possible. So in terms of education, it is pretty relevant to create that discussions with the students, so they are able to understand that future goals always with an S at the end. So the futures are plural, not just because there are several opportunities of different things that are about to happen, but also because they have to be very inclusive and intersectional. So trying to create a practice that is taking account that is pretty relevant in terms to not colonialize the future with dominant ideas or solutions that cannot be connected with the diversity and of opportunities and problems also that we are facing in different regions.
Perfect. And one more, if I may. Is there a moment of great complexity in your life that shaped your approach to design leadership?
Wow, this is okay. Well, this is a wonderful question. I think that in the moment where I already mentioned this idea of giving balance from being a discipline very oriented to problem solving and being connected to the market and the velocity and trying also to put a balance on also creating spaces for reflection and thinking the longer term and putting balance these two things. I think it is also part of my personal experience somehow, being a practitioner and also a researcher and educator. That has been one of the major challenges in terms of design leadership, on how to put in balance and connect these two words that I think that at this point is very valuable for our discipline, let's say.
Perfect. That brings us to the conclusion of our 30 minutes together. Roberto, thank you so much for your presentation and for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.